People typically head deep into the woods to escape. They are looking for a break from constant connectivity, security cameras, and streetlights. They actively seek out environments where they are completely isolated from the modern world. But that isolation introduces a distinct vulnerability. When you hike miles past the edge of cell service, you are deliberately cutting off your access to immediate help. If an emergency happens, there are no witnesses, and dialing 911 is no longer an option. To mitigate this risk, hikers rely on a standard set of physical survival tools. They carry topographic maps and GPS to impose order on confusing terrain. They build campfires to push back the darkness and increase visibility. They carry emergency whistles to signal for rescue. These tools offer a sense of control over a wild environment. The danger in the deep woods is rarely getting lost. The real threat emerges when an unseen human predator understands your reliance on those specific survival tools and begins intentionally manipulating them to bait you into a trap. In September 2020, two experienced backpackers named Ryan and Caleb entered an isolated forest in northern Michigan. With no cell service, their navigation relied heavily on standard blue rectangular blazes painted onto the tree trunks, marking the official route. On their second day, the hikers began passing blue markers that looked freshly painted and wet. This topographic map shows what happened next. The solid line represents the official trail. When they checked their offline GPS, they noticed they were physically drifting east, represented by this dotted line, pulling them steadily away from the safe, established route. Someone was actively modifying the environment around them. The stalker walked ahead of the hikers, painting over the legitimate trail markers with brown camouflage paint to create a brown void where the trail used to be. Simultaneously, they laid a brand new fake path deeper into the unmarked area using blue duct tape wrapped around trees. Realizing the physical markers were compromised, Ryan and Caleb turned around and began navigating purely by GPS. That is when a single sharp whistle blasted from the woods behind them. Seconds later, a second whistle answered from ahead. Coordinated, unseen figures were tracking their movements, forcing them into a hasty retreat back to the official path. They reached the real trail by sunset and immediately set up camp. But at 11 p.m., Ryan woke up and shined his flashlight into the trees. Stuck to the bark, 20 feet from their tent, was a piece of bright blue duct tape. The predator had followed them into the dark, silently marking their campsite while they tried to sleep. The hikers fled before dawn. When they reported the incident, a park ranger revealed a disturbing context. 2 weeks prior, another group of backpackers followed identical fake markers roughly 5 miles away. They were never found. Rangers only recovered an abandoned campsite containing stolen backpacks hanging from the branches of trees. Navigation systems provide security because we assume the map is an objective reality. When a malicious actor gains the physical ability to rewrite that map in real time, your trusted sense of direction becomes the exact mechanism they use to isolate you. A campfire is the most primal human survival tool. On a solo camping trip in northern Wisconsin in October 2021, a man named Aaron built a fire on the edge of a remote lake. The fire provides warmth, but crucially, it creates a perimeter of visibility against the encroaching darkness. Later that evening, a second campfire appeared on the opposite shore. When Aaron stood to add wood to his fire, the silhouette across the lake stood up. When Aaron walked toward the water, the silhouette moved toward the water. It perfectly mimicked his flashlight signals, and as Aaron's fire slowly burned down, the distant fire died at the exact same unnatural rate. Spooked by the deliberate mirroring, Aaron packed his essentials and attempted to hike out via an old logging road. 20 minutes down the trail, he stopped. Another fire was burning directly beside the path. A motionless silhouette stood beside it, taking a single step backward for every step Aaron took backward. His escape route was blocked. Aaron ran back to his original, now entirely dark campsite and locked himself inside his tent. He looked out across the water. The previously dead fire on the opposite shore was burning brightly again, with the figure standing right beside it, watching his tent. He waited until daylight to investigate the opposite shore. When he reached the exact coordinates where the fire had burned, he found pristine wilderness. There was no fire ring,
There were no ashes, no flattened vegetation, and absolutely no footprints. But tied tightly to a tree branch, facing directly toward Aaron's campsite, was a small rectangular mirror. There was never a second campfire. The predator had rigged the glass to reflect Aaron's own light back at him from 400 yards away. By utilizing the mirror, the stalker turned Aaron's tool for visibility against him. The campfire acted as a beacon, perfectly illuminating the victim while allowing the predator to study his exact movements from the safety of total darkness. During a remote vegetation survey in rural Oregon in 2019, Emily and her 3 coworkers operated under a strict company safety protocol. If anyone became separated or injured, they were to blow their orange emergency whistle 3 times. It is a universal signal for severe distress. At 12:40 a.m., Emily woke to the sound of 3 distinct whistle blasts coming from deep in the forest. Knowing another survey crew was operating miles to the north, her team had an immediate professional and ethical obligation to follow the sound into the dark to render medical aid. This radar diagram illustrates the acoustic trap the crew walked into. As the central dot, representing the team, moved forward to investigate, the source of the whistle, represented by the pulsing ring, maintained a mathematically perfect, constant distance ahead of them. The sound lured them nearly a mile away from their tents. Then the trap sprang. The team stopped walking. Seconds later, 3 loud whistle blasts echoed through the trees, but they were no longer coming from ahead. The sound originated from directly behind them, precisely from the coordinates of their unprotected campsite. The crew rushed back to camp to find a set of bare footprints circling the perimeter of their tents. When Emily checked her backpack to confirm her gear, she made a chilling realization. Her own orange emergency whistle had been unclipped and stolen from her bag while she was sleeping. At dawn, the crew discovered a second, identical orange whistle planted underneath Emily's tent. Months later, another crew found an illegal trail camera tied to a tree near the site. The final photo on the memory card showed Emily's team walking into the woods to help. Standing roughly 50 feet behind them was a blurry, barefoot figure holding the stolen whistle. The predator weaponized human empathy. By stealing the emergency equipment and simulating a crisis, they turned a standardized rescue protocol into a leash, pulling 4 trained professionals directly into the dark. Maps, compasses, flares, and whistles are inanimate objects. They provide raw data and physical utility, but they are completely incapable of conveying the malicious intent of the person holding them. People often say their greatest fear in the wilderness is wandering off the path and getting lost, but the physical evidence from these forests suggests a much darker reality. It is far more terrifying to realize you are exactly where a predator wants you to be. When you step off the grid, you have to critically evaluate the physical signals around you. You have to question a trail marker that looks too fresh, a distant fire that mirrors your movements too perfectly, or a distress signal that seems to be mathematically pulling you deeper into the trees. True wilderness isolation means abandoning the illusion of control. Because when someone else is silently rewriting the environment, following the rules of survival might just lead you directly into a trap.